Donald Trump's wildly incompetent FBI director, Kash Patel, is desperately trying to take a victory lap and save face after Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin was surrendered to local authorities by the alleged assassin's own father. Patel's incompetence is so extraordinary that MAGA is openly turning on him, including prominent MAGA voices like Christopher Rufo and Steve Bannon. Folks, this is not good for Kash Patel. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, at a press conference earlier today, this is what Kash Patel had to say after Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, Tyler Robinson, was surrendered to local authorities, not the FBI, but local authorities, by his own father.
This is what happens when you let good cops be cops. The FBI and our partners are proud to stand here today together to bring justice to the family of Charlie Kirk.
This is what happens when you let good cops be cops. And he was trying to take a victory lap for this. Like, oh, the FBI did great work here. As Steve Bannon is about to explain to you, Steve Bannon, who's ideologically predisposed to approve basically everything Kash Patel does. They were partners in metaphorical crime for years in terms of hyping up conspiracy theories that were favorable to MAGA, okay? Steve Bannon went apeshit on his War Room podcast and called out Kash Patel for his incompetence.
Correct me if I'm wrong. We watched the 9-minute press conference yesterday, and the pictures that came up and went all over the internet, and it appears the kid had said something to the family. The family had just confronted him, and the family turned him in. I'm not seeing the great law enforcement work, and I'm not, saying there's not great law enforcement. They all came together. I got that, but this was not through law enforcement work. There's actually a report out there that maybe the FBI have been tipped off about somebody up on the roof, during the week. I don't know if that's accurate. We're trying to check it out, but we don't need a governor, a political figure, to step up. A governor is also known to be, I think, particularly obnoxious. Remember, he's totally woke. He was all into the transgender thing. This guy's completely woke.
I should say, for context, he's referring to Utah Governor Republican Spencer Cox, who is certainly probably the most reasonable Republican governor in the country. He also spoke at the press conference, tried to, encourage people to not be violent in response to this and to, try to use this as a turning point to heal the nation, what you would expect a responsible leader to do. Steve Bannon is going off on him right now. We'll play the rest of this clip, but because he ultimately turns his focus back on Kash Patel.
We don't need a governor to step up and give us basically a political pep talk and a rally, and let's just all come together. When you have an Antifa, you get details in here about the theme song for Antifa on the bullet. You got the symbology that Antifa uses all the time. You clearly have a young, progressive, left-wing hater that assassinated Charlie Kirk in cold blood. What I want to see is some law enforcement people step up to the microphone, give some details, and take some questions from the media. I don't know why Kash flew out there, thousands of miles to give us, hey, working partnerships and our great partnership in Utah. Okay.
Yeah, he's fed up. He's like, okay, I got that. And again, it does seem like just a face-saving effort, and there's actual credible reporting to suggest that that is precisely what it was. But Steve Bannon was not alone. Quote, he performed terribly. Powerful conservative activist Christopher Rufo calls for Kash Patel's ouster. So let's take a look at that. I wonder, did he post this on X? Okay, we're going to read the full statement. He goes, I'm grateful that Utah authorities have captured the suspect in the Charlie Kirk assassination, and I think it's time for Republicans to assess whether Kash Patel is the right man to run the FBI. He performed terribly in the last few days, and it's not clear whether he has the operational expertise to investigate, infiltrate, and disrupt the violent movements of whatever ideology that threaten the peace in the United States. There are two ways forwards. First, we can enter a spiral of violence, which would be catastrophic for the country. Second, federal law enforcement makes a credible plan to restore the civil order, initiates a campaign to disrupt domestic terror networks in all 50 states, and sets them in motion with the goal of preventing further bloodshed, all of which can be done and must be done in a principled, legal, nonpartisan manner. We would be wise to take this moment and ask whether Kash Patel has what it takes to get this done. I've been on the phone the past few days with many conservative leaders, all of whom wholeheartedly support the Trump administration, and none of whom are confident that the current structure of the FBI is up to the task. So that's pretty brutal for Kash Patel. Again, Steve Bannon, this article references, which we just played that clip. Christopher Rufo, I will point out, is a really influential right-wing thought leader. He was the one who kind of orchestrated the public culture war campaign. He basically, I mean, he's obviously involved in political activism, but he deals more with the culture war bullshit. So he was the guy behind, the CRT and DEI craze of the past couple of years. They're teaching critical race theory in schools because they put black kids and white kids together and they sit them side by side and they say that racism is bad. What is that if not CRT? He doesn't actually have that accent, but that's my default as somebody who grew up in Kentucky. When I hear some dipshit, right-wing racist bullshit or culture war bullshit, that's the accent I use. Christopher Rufo is a very smart guy. He's like Bannon, right? Very smart, kind of an evil genius. And so he's a major player on the right. And for him to be so like publicly explicit, like, dude, Kash Patel sucks. When you think about who Kash Patel is too, Kash Patel is not some institutionalist rhino Republican that these people constantly mock. Kash Patel himself is a right-wing MAGA culture warrior. That is specifically why he was chosen for the job. And again, he and Bannon worked, all sorts of like sinister conspiracies and tried to appeal to that, this idea that, January 6th was fake and the election was, or January 6th was an inside job and the election was stolen. Kash Patel was also on Steve Bannon for this like iconically viral clip where Kash Patel's like, hey, listen, if we win the election, we're coming after you. We will use whatever tools are at our disposal. We will sue or prosecute you into oblivion. That was basically Kash Patel's audition tape. Kash Patel wrote a friggin' children's book about King Donald Trump. That's creepy shit. He was chosen for this. And so for Christopher Rufo, who's like, man, listen, you're a compatriot with respect to all the culture war bullshit. We are side by side. We are brothers in arms in that respect. But damn, you suck at this job. You suck at this job. For Christopher Rufo to acknowledge that, that's pretty bad. But here's additional reporting as to why this all kind of fits together because, again, according to media, FBI Director Kash Patel berated agents in, quote, profanity-laced video call, accusing them of withholding info on Kirk case. All right, so let's take a look. FBI Director Kash Patel reportedly berated Utah agents and accused them of not giving him timely information on the Charlie Krik case. On Friday, Patel joined Utah state officials at a press conference announcing the apprehension of Kirk's alleged shooter. The individual, identified as 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, confessed to the shooting to his father. The day before, however, police were still on the hunt for Robinson as a person of interest. Sources described to the New York Times a heated video call in which Patel called the investigation a, quote, Mickey Mouse operation and criticized agents for waiting, quote, nearly 12 hours to show him the first photos of the then unidentified Robinson. So this is the excerpt from the New York Times. Patel and his deputy, Dan Bongino, another right-wing culture war dipshit who used to be a Fox News host, and then he went on to become his own like right-wing podcast, very successful, made it clear that they were under intense pressure to catch the killer of Kirk. They expressed themselves with such fierce urgency that, in the view of some participants, it hinted at another motive, to prove they were up to the task. See how it all fits together now? The director wasted no time before calling out subordinates that he said failed to give him timely information and was incensed that agents in the Salt Lake City waited nearly 12 hours to show him a photo of the suspected killer, according to 3 people familiar with the exchange. Patel said he would not tolerate any more, quote, Mickey Mouse operations, an official on the phone call recounted. It was one of his few utterances without profanity, the person added. So, in other words, Patel knew he was fucking up. This was where they arrested, or detained 2 suspects, announced it on Twitter. Kash Patel announced it. We have the suspect in custody. We got him in custody. Mere minutes after Kirk was shot and before it was confirmed he was killed. And then about an hour later, that he had to sheepishly say, okay, we had to actually let this guy go because it turns out he's not the guy. But we got another guy. And then they had to let that person go too. So, and they were doing this in real time. So it looked like the Keystone Cops. And you may recall, we discussed that in a previous video. Laura Ingraham, I almost said Laura Loomer. Laura Ingraham from Fox News, MAGA Fox News host, was calling Patel out and others as well. So it may very well be that Kash Patel loses his job ultimately as a consequence of this. I mean, on balance of probability, I expect that Trump will stick by him because Trump values loyalty more than competence, obviously, given this administration. And Patel has a lot of loyalty. But it says something that so many prominent MAGA Republicans are openly turning on Kash Patel, humiliating him in this way. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.